Yes, YouTubers, good morning. This is part 2 of the Papal Bull called of the Papal Bulls that is written by two popes. Actually, I had done part 1, this is part 2. This is the second Papal Bull written in 1455 by Pope Nicholas V. The name of the Papal Bull is called Romanus Pontifex. Okay, Romanus Pontifex here. Romanus Pontifex, Latin for the Roman Pontiff, which is the Pope, is a papal bull written in 1455 by Pope Nicholas V to King Afonso V of Portugal as a follow-up to the Dum Diversas. It confirmed to the crown of Portugal dominion over all land south of Cape Bajador in Africa, along with encouraging the seizure of the lands of Saracen Turks and non-Christians, which is what they call Muslim people. It repeated the earlier bull's permissions for the enslavement of such peoples. The bull's primary purpose was to forbid other Christian nations from infringing the King of Portugal's right to trade and colonization in the region. This bull should not be confused with a September 21st, 1451 papal bull by the same name, also written by Nicholas V, relieving the Dukes of Austria from any potential ecclesiastical censure for permitting Jews to dwell there. Background. Around 1312, Geonosis navigator Lancelotto Malocello came upon the Canary Islands. The Portuguese traveled there in 1341, both to trade and raid. By 1346, slave raiding was occurring. However, the first attempt of permanent colonization was sponsored by the Castilians in 1402. During the 14th century, a variety of forces competed for control of the Canaries: Geonosis and Catalan, Malacron, and Castilian and Portuguese. In the following century, Castile and Portugal were the primary contenders. In the early 15th century, the Portuguese searched for a sea road to India to participate in the spice trade. As a first step, Prince Henry the Navigator launched expeditions to explore west coast of Africa. Disputes arose between the Portuguese and the Castilians regarding control along the African coast. As an independent third party, the Pope would on occasion be asked to arbitrate disputes between kingdoms. The Pope is playing the role of a judge now. On January the 5th, 1443, in the papal bull called Rex Regum, Eugenius IV took a neutral position on the disputed claims of Castile and Portugal over territory in Africa, which both claimed. History. It was not until Alfonso V of Portugal responded to a papal call for aid against the Turks, who eventually seized Constantinople in 1453, that Pope Nicholas V supported the Portuguese claims in the bull called Dum Diversas. Nonetheless, in 1454, a fleet of caravels from Seville and Cadiz traded along the African coast, and upon their return were intercepted by a Portuguese squadron. One of the ships was captured with crew and cargo taken to Portugal. Enrique IV of Castile threatened war. Afonso V appealed to the Pope for moral support of Portugal's right to a monopoly of trade in lands she discovered. The bull, issued in January 1455, endorsed Portuguese possession of Ceuta, which they already held, and the exclusive right to trade, navigation, and fishing in the discoverer's land. It provided an exemption from a canon law prohibition of trading with infidels. The bull also allowed enslavement of natives, principally for use as slaves for rowing in galleys, similarly to the treatment afforded captured Christians in Islamic territories. Content. The bull praises earlier Portuguese victories against the Muslims of North Africa and the success of expeditions of discovery and conquest to the Azores and to Africa south of Cape Bajador. It also repeats earlier injunctions not to supply items useful in war, such as weaponry, iron, or timber, to either Muslims or non-Christians. The substance of the bull's articles are as follows, and I will quote it right here. The Roman Pontiff, successor of the key bearer of the heavenly kingdom and vicar of Jesus Christ, contemplating with a father's mind all the several climes of the world and the characteristics of all the nations dwelling in them, and seeking and desiring salvation of all, wholesomely ordains and disposes upon careful deliberations those things which he sees will be agreeable to the divine majesty, and by which he may bring the sheep entrusted to him by God into the single divine fold, and may acquire for them the reward of eternal felicity, and obtain pardon for their souls. This we believe will more certainly come to pass through the aid of the Lord, if we bestow suitable favors and special graces on those Catholic kings and princesses who, like athletes and intrepid champions of the Christian faith, as we know by the evidence of facts, not only restrain the savage excesses of the Saracens and of other infidels, enemies of the Christian name, but also for the defense and increase of the faith, vanquish them and their kingdoms and habitations, those situated in the remotest parts, unknown to us. And the said infant, believing that he would best perform his duty to God in this matter, if by his effort and industry that sea might become navigable as far as to the Indians who are said to worship the name of Christ, and that thus he might be able to enter into relations with them, and to incite them to aid the Christian against the Saracens, to conquer their right and possession. The said king and infante, under the certain most severe penalties then expressed, have prohibited and in general have ordained that none, unless with their sailors and ships, and on payment of a certain tribute, with an express license previously obtained from the said king or infant, should presume to sail to the said provinces, or to trade in their ports, or to fish in sea. Since we had formerly by other letters of ours granted other things free and ample faculty to the aforesaid King Alfonso to invade, search out, vanquish, and subdue all Saracens whatsoever, and pagans whatsoever, and other enemies of Christ whatsoever, placed, and kingdoms, dukedoms, principalities, and possessions, and all movable and immovable goods whatsoever held and possessed by them, and to reduce their persons to perpetual slavery, and not to apply and appropriate to himself. I read something by using the word not. And then to reduce their persons to perpetual slavery, and to apply and appropriate to himself and his successors the kingdoms, dukedoms, counties, principalities, dominions, possessions, and goods, and to convert them to his or her profit, by having secured the said faculty, the said King Alfonso, or by his authority, the aforesaid infant justly and lawfully has acquired and possessed, and does possesses these lands and islands, harbors and seas, and they do of right belong and pertain to the king, said Alfonso, and his successors. nor without special license from King Alfonso and his successors themselves as any other, even of the faithful of Christ, being entitled hitherto, nor is he by any means now entitled lawfully to meddle therewith. Effect. King Alfonso V gave a ceremonial lecture on the bull in Lisbon Cathedral on October 5, 1455 to inform the foreign representatives of commerce. With the bull, the Portuguese had a monopoly for trade in the new areas in Africa and Asia. It also served as a legal basis for boarding foreign ships in that area. Historian Stefan Baum notes that, and I quote, Prince Harry and King Afonso V had now also shrouded Portuguese commercial activities in a cloak of pious devotion to the church's work. That is the Catholic Church's work. Okay. Colonialism. In 1493, Pope Alexander VI issued the bull called Inter Caetera, stating one Christian nation did not have the right to establish dominion over lands previously dominated by another Christian nation. Together, the Dum Diversas, the Romanus Pontifex, and the Inter Caetera have been interpreted as serving as a justification for the age of imperialism. So whenever you see the United States and Great Britain showing forth a kind of an imperial attitude in terms of dictating to other people in other parts of the world who is not of their people, this is where the word imperialism has come in. Okay, and let us click on it for a brief and let's look at what the definition of age of imperialism, what it means and where it's coming from. Age of imperialism. The age of imperialism, a time of period beginning around 1700, saw generally European industrialization or industrializing nations engage in the process of colonizing, influencing, and annexing other parts of the world in order to gain political power. Although imperialist practices have existed for thousands of years, the term age of imperialism generally refers to the activities of nations such as the United Kingdom, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, and the United States from the early 18th century to the middle 20th centuries. Example, the Great Game in Persian lands, the scramble for Africa, and the open door policy in China. Okay, so let us go back and continue back on right here. There were also early influences on the development of the slave trade of the 15th and 16th century, even though the papal bull Sublimus Dei of 1537 forbade the enslavement of non-Christians. The executive brief for Sublimus Dei was withdrawn by the Pope after a protest by the Spanish monarchy. Pope Paul III publicly sanctioned slavery in Rome in 1545, the enslavement of Henry VIII in 1547, and the purchase of Muslim slaves in 1548. So, you see, even the very Pope publicly sanctioned slavery in Rome against their own Gentile people. Okay? Because they are seeing themselves as authority over people, because they are a part of a political or spiritual ecclesiastic systems of men which think that gives them right to talk and dictate to others. And when people do not obey them, they want to prosecute them unto death, which is wrongdoing on their part. Okay. Norman Housley observes that it would be unfair to criticize the papal court exclusively for its failure to be more discriminating in its grants or to take more frequently the kind of action which Eugenius IV adopted in 1454 over the Canaries. The idea of discovery and the conversion and enslavement that accompanied it were identified with R.L. concepts of crusade and chivalry or cavalry at that time. Okay, we're going to end part 2 of the papal bull that institutes slavery, and then we will continue with part 3 by beginning it off with America and how these people come to exist today over this land.